What is unfolding in Washington right now is not a single event, a single disagreement, or a single headline. It is a broader moment of internal tension within the Republican Party that has been developing over time and is now becoming increasingly visible. At the center of this dynamic is Donald Trump, a figure whose influence continues to shape Republican strategy, messaging, and internal power structures. To understand what is happening, it is important to move beyond surface-level reactions and look at how political organizations actually function under pressure. Political parties are not monolithic. They are coalitions made up of elected officials, donors, strategists, voters, and institutions, each with different incentives and risk calculations. When those incentives begin to diverge, internal friction becomes unavoidable. Over recent months, signs of strain within Republican leadership have become harder to ignore. Public messaging often emphasizes unity and discipline, but behind closed doors, disagreements over strategy, timing, and long-term direction have intensified. These disagreements are not primarily ideological. In many cases, they are about power, influence, and political survival. Some Republican lawmakers view continued alignment with Trump as essential. They see his ability to mobilize voters, dominate media attention, and shape the national conversation as an asset that cannot be replaced. From this perspective, distancing from Trump carries significant political risk, particularly in primary elections and grassroots fundraising. Others within the party see the situation differently. They worry that constant internal conflict and personality-driven politics make long-term governance more difficult. They are concerned about electoral consequences beyond the party's core base, and about how institutional credibility is affected when internal disputes dominate headlines. This creates a strategic divide. On one side are those who prioritize short-term mobilization and loyalty signaling. On the other are those who emphasize stability, predictability, and broader appeal. Neither side necessarily denies Trump's influence. The disagreement is about how that influence should be managed, and whether it can be balanced with institutional control. Washington responds to these tensions in subtle but meaningful ways. Silence becomes a strategy. Carefully worded statements replace direct confrontation. Legislative priorities shift, stall, or advance, depending on how they intersect with internal dynamics. In this environment, what is not said often matters as much as what is said publicly. Trump's role in this dynamic follows a familiar pattern. Rather than stepping back in moments of internal criticism, he amplifies his presence. He reframes disagreement as opposition and test of loyalty. This approach has historically been effective in consolidating support, but it also sharpens internal divisions. For Republican lawmakers, this creates a difficult balancing act. Open criticism risks backlash from voters and political allies. Silence can be interpreted as weakness or indecision. Public support may offer short-term protection, but can limit strategic flexibility in the future. Each choice carries consequences, and those consequences are now unfolding in real time. What makes this moment particularly sensitive is timing. These tensions are emerging during a period of heightened political attention, where every statement is amplified and every disagreement is scrutinized. Election cycles intensify internal pressure because decisions made now can shape political trajectories for years. At the same time, the broader media environment plays a critical role. Political narratives are no longer shaped solely through traditional institutions. Digital platforms, influencers, and alternative media ecosystems now play a significant role in framing events. This changes how internal conflicts are perceived and how quickly narratives spread. Control of the narrative has become as important as control of formal political mechanisms. In this context, internal disagreements are not just policy debates. They are information battles. Who frames the story often determines how it is understood by the public. For observers, it is important to recognize that internal party tension is not inherently a sign of collapse. In many cases, it is a sign of transformation. Political coalitions evolve as external conditions change. Leadership structures adjust. Influence shifts. The question is not whether tension exists, but how it is resolved. Some Republican leaders appear to be betting that internal disagreements can be managed without open fracture. They believe that shared opposition, electoral incentives, and institutional interests will eventually outweigh internal divisions. Others are less confident, arguing that unresolved tension risks long-term instability. This internal struggle also raises broader questions about modern political leadership. How much influence should any single individual hold within a political movement? How do parties balance charisma and institutional continuity? And how do they adapt when traditional structures are challenged by new forms of communication and mobilization? Asterisk, from the outside, these debates may appear abstract. In practice, they have concrete consequences. They influence candidate selection, legislative strategy, fundraising priorities, and voter engagement. They shape not only what policies are pursued, but how political power is exercised. Asterisk for voters. Understanding these internal dynamics provides context that is often missing from headline coverage. Political outcomes are rarely the result of a single decision or event. They are the product of ongoing negotiations, compromises, and power struggles that unfold over time. Asterisk, what we are witnessing now is not a sudden rupture, but the visible surface of pressure that has been building within the Republican Party. How that pressure is managed will shape the party's direction, its leadership structure, and its relationship with voters moving forward. Asterisk, looking ahead, several paths remain possible. Internal tensions could stabilize as strategic priorities align. They could intensify if disagreements harden into factions, or they could evolve into a redefinition of leadership roles and institutional boundaries. None of these outcomes is predetermined. Asterisk, what is clear is that this moment matters. It reflects broader changes in how political power operates in the modern media environment and how internal party dynamics influence public outcomes. The decisions being made now will have effects that extend beyond any single election cycle. Asterisk, as this story continues to develop, the most important task for observers is to move beyond reactive interpretations and focus on structure, incentives, and long-term implications. Political tension is not just noise. It is a signal, and understanding that signal requires patience, context, and careful analysis. Asterisk, this is not the end of the story. It is part of a longer process that will continue to shape American politics in the months and years ahead. Watching how internal tensions are managed, amplified, or resolved will provide valuable insight into what comes next and why it matters.